All right, I want to, we didn't do anything on Chayei because we were away all last week, so I want to do one or two shiurim on Chayei. For people on Torah, anytime we missed the week, sorry about that. We're doing Chayei. Hopefully, we're not going to do more than 2 days on it. But remember, the first 3 days of the week anyway follow the previous week. They're linked to the previous Shabbos. The first 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, still get the energy, the hashpah from the previous Shabbos. Then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is already the next Shabbos. It's already going into the next Shabbos. That's a good excuse. So, by the way, if anybody has any questions, if you ever want to ask anybody, Torah anytime, you could always email me if you have any questions or comments or compliments. It's Dovid B. Kaplan. Dovid, D-O-V-I-D, B as in bloodthirsty, Kaplan, K-A-P-L-A-N. Right, the Dovid B. Kaplan at Torah at Gmail. Okay. Now, just a few small points here. Right at the very beginning of the Parsha, so it says like this: "Vayu Chayei Sarah mea shana v'esrim shana v'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah." The Torah breaks her life up into three portions, and then it uses a very strange turn of phrase because it says, if you look at the translation, it says Vayu Chayei Sarah. This was the life of Sarah, 127 years. Then it repeats again, Shnei Chayei Sarah, the years of the life of Sarah, which would appear to be redundant. What do you need to? You just said you're talking about Chayei Sarah. Why did it say the years of the life of Sarah? So, first of all, one of them Parsha says that, the Gemara says somebody who does not have children, it's as if they're not alive. There are four people who as if they're not alive. Chashuvim kemes, they're considered like they're dead. And one of those four people is there's a childless person, a poor person, a blind person, and somebody who's a metzora, somebody who's somebody who's got leprosy. They're considered as if they're dead. So is that the fourth person? A metzora, right? Okay. So it's interesting that Sarah was childless until she was 90 years old. At 90, she finally had a child, which means that her life really started when she was 90. And she died at 127, which means how many years did she live? 37 years. Look at the first word of the Pasuk, Parsha. Vayiyu Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Vayiyu is the gematria of 37. Right? It said the life of Sarah was 37 years. And the life of Sarah was 37 years. As with 37 years, she was alive when Yitzchak was born. Okay? Now, there's a very big misconception here. Vav is 6, Yud is 10, Hey is 5, that's 21, is blackjack. And another Yud is 10 is 31, and 6 is 37. Okay? So that's the alludes to the 37 years. Okay. There's a very big misconception. This has to be gotten very straight. I'll give you two examples. Example number one was there was an incident of a little boy fell off of a 4th-story building, and he got a bad head injury. There was a Hatzalah guy nearby. This Hatzalah guy picked him up, whisked him off to the hospital, and they did emergency surgery and saved his life. And the doctor said that 10 minutes later and he wouldn't have made it. So everybody said, wow, it's a good thing the Hatzalah guy was nearby, because otherwise he would have died. So Rav Shach Zatzal said, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. It's not that because the Hatzalah guy was there, that's why his life was saved. There was a decree. The boy had to go through the suffering for whatever reason. His parents had to go through the suffering, and he had to come within an inch of his life. And that's why the Hatzalah guy was there. Had the Hatzalah guy not been there, so he would have simply fallen closer to the hospital. It's not that, if not for the Hatzalah guy, he would have died. That means that all circumstances were being manipulated by God in order to get to this situation. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the Hatzalah, right? It wasn't because the Hatzalah guy was there, therefore he was saved. The Hatzalah guy is a form of hishtadlus that we have to make. We have to have an Hatzalah organization. But that's not what came first. The cause and effect sometimes are very, very confused. So I'll tell you an unbelievable story. There was a guy, he happened to be from my neighborhood, that he went to Meron on Lag BaOmer. And there was a frum couple that hitched a ride with him back to Yerushalayim at night after the day's celebration, the festivities, a frum couple. And they went with this guy in the car. The guy apparently either he fell asleep at the wheel or he had a blowout. Something happened. He had a bad accident and the woman was killed. And she was a mother of 13 children. So this guy was terribly, he was broken up. The guy, the driving car, was all broken up. And after a couple of, he went to the house to be Menachem Avol where they were sitting Shiva. So the father was there, the husband was there, they're in the house where they're sitting Shiva. And this guy's just an absolute, he's just devastated. The father of the woman, her name was Sarah, by the way, the brother of the woman, her name was Sarah. He said to the guy, what are you upset about? The guy said, what am I upset about? I mean, what am I upset about? Because of me, your daughter's not alive. So the father said, boy, you got it all wrong, buddy. He says, look at the pasuk in the Torah. The Torah says, Vayu Chayei Sarah, Mea Shana Vesrim Shana Shnei Chayei Sarah. Now what does the Torah say? Why did Sarah die? Because of the Akedah, right? Then Satan came to her. It's one of the earliest midrashim we ever learned. The Satan came to her incognito, and he said to her, oh, by the way, Avram shechted Yitzchak. And she was all devastated. Then the Satan dressed himself up as Yitzchak, and he appeared. And when she saw Yitzchak come and walk in, she was so happy, the shock of the joy, she died. She died from that. That's what the Medrash says. So based on that, the brothers, when they had to tell Yaakov Avinu that Yosef was alive, that's why they didn't just come and say, hey, Yosef's alive. Because they were worried. They already had one precedent where the shock could kill somebody. The shock of the joy could kill somebody. So what they did was they had Serach Bas Asher come in with the harp, and she played the harp, and she broke the news. She started singing da 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 Yosef, da 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 Yosef is da 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 Yaakov. Well, what's going on? Da 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 Yosef, good news. Da 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 Yosef, because they didn't want to just come in. Ah, Yosef's alive. So I remember I told you the story about the guy with the old man Murphy wins $10 million in the lottery. So the family had to break the news to him, but he's an old man. I got to tell you, he just won $10 million. They're nervous, the shock is going to kill him. So they hired an expert psychologist to break the news to him. So the psychologist comes in and says, hey, Murph, what would you do if I told you that you won $100? He goes, well, I'd keep 50 and he'd give you 50. He says, and what would you do if I told you won $10,000? Well, I'd keep 5,000 and give you 5,000. He says, and what would you do if I told you won $10 million? He goes, well, I'd take $5 million and give you $5 million. Psychologist had a heart attack and died on the spot. So the shock, the shock can sometimes, the shock can sometimes kill you. So over here, the father says to him, why did Sarah die? Well, Rashi says there was the shock of hearing about the Akedah, this whole shtick that the Satan pulled on her. That's what killed her. So that's not why she died. That's not why she died. Look at the words of the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Vayu Chayei Sarah Mea V'Esrim V'Sheva Shana." Her life was 127 years. Shnei Chayei Sarah. That was her life allotment. Had it not been this, it would have been something else. She would have had a heart attack on the spot. She would have had an aneurysm. Who knows what? There are plenty of ways she could die. Her life allotment was 127 years. It just happens to be that the thing that triggered it was the Akedah. Had it not been the Akedah, it would have been something else. He said his daughter had to die, and that was when her time was die. It happened to be that this was the guy who was the cause of HaKadosh Baruch Hu used him to bring about the death. Had it not been that, she would have had a heart attack. Had it not been that, he says, what are you broken up about? What are you upset about? It wasn't you. You didn't kill her. She had to die anyway. If she wouldn't have died this, it would have died something else. Very interesting. That means that there's a cause and an effect, but we often confuse. We think that the cause brings about the effect. It's the other way. There's an effect, therefore Hashem finds its cause. If it wouldn't be this cause, it'd be a different cause. That's the idea. By the way, the Chassam Sofer says, and why was the Akedah the cause of death? Why was it? Because Ro had many other different ways that she could have died. Why Dafka the Akedah? Through the Akedah, that's why she should die. Why the Akedah? So Chassam Sofer says, there's a midah keneged midah. Kodesh Baruch Hu works, you get what you deserve. When she heard the news that Yitzchak would be born, she didn't believe it, right? She laughed. She laughed cynically. You didn't believe what you should have believed. Therefore, you ended up believing what you shouldn't have believed. Right? That was why that was the cause. But that she would have died at that point, that's Shnei Chayei Sarah. She was going to die at that point anyway. Number one. Number two, it says, Vayavo Avram lispod l'sar v'liv kosa, third line. So you notice in the third line there's a small chaf. There's a small chaf. And Chazal say that the v'liv kosa, he cried less than normal. That's why in the word he cried, there's a small, he cried less than normal. Now most people understand, why did he cry less than normal? Well, it's an older lady. Most people, when an older person dies, people are less racked up. You're less broken up when an older person dies. When a younger person dies, chas v'shalom, it's a tragedy, people cry more. I had a very big mashgiach, a very big Talmud Chacham, said people got it backwards. You see, when a younger person dies, so everybody could comfort, they said, really, you could take comfort, and say, well, it won't happen to me. If a younger person dies, people can at least comfort themselves, well, it won't happen to me. When an older person dies, you can't say, well, it won't happen to me. Right? The mortality rate among human beings is still running at 100%. Right? Nobody can turn around and say, oh, well, it's because they got old, but I'm never going to get old. Right? Can't say that. And nobody can say it's not going to happen to me. So sometimes we get it backwards. When should you write, whoa, another old person died. Uh-oh. I was at a friend of mine, it was Nifter, so they made a memorial service. Sorry, a bunch of guys, a bunch of clowns. These are clowns from that I had grown up with. And none of them, they said they were clowns then and they remain clowns. So I remember we're at this memorial service. And one of my friends, the guy who was the king clown, first of all, they were serving, they had food for everybody. So they were serving like tuna fish and that sort of thing. He says, tuna fish, hey, where are the hot dogs and hamburgers? That's what he would have wanted. that was the first thing. That was the first thing he said. And I'm like, did you ever grow up, man? Did you ever grow up? Nothing ever changed with this guy. Then this guy walks around the room going, all right, which one of us is going to be next? You're not at a baseball game here. You're not at a picnic. You're at a memorial service. They had no respect. No, what do you call it? So, this is a guy who I once saw. This guy was a black belt in karate. I walked into a hotel lobby with him, and he did, as we walked into the hotel lobby, right in the middle of the lobby, he does a karate somersault. Right in the middle, they were just walking. Anything was possible with him, and anything did happen with him. So over here, the Torah is telling you, first of all, what do you call it? There's this idea of Avram Avinu cries less because she's an older person, but there's a much deeper idea here. You see, after the 10 tests, Avram Avinu go through 10 tests. And he failed. What's the final test that he passed? The one from the previous Parsha was the Akedah. That's the ultimate test. The Satan, if you look at the Midrashim, the Satan did everything he could to try to stop Avram Avinu from performing the Akedah because he knew that that's going to be a merit for the Jewish people throughout history. The Gemara says that why do we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? To trigger the memory of it. So when we blow the shofar, it's as if we ourselves have performed the Akedah, and that's a tremendous merit for us on Rosh Hashanah. So the entire purpose of the Satan is looking to always prosecute the Jewish people. He's the big prosecutor. And he's constantly trying to stop us from having any merits. Avram Avinu goes and performs the Akedah. That's a major setback for the Satan. So what does he want to do? He's got only one chance now, one last chance, to take away the merit of the Akedah. How could a person lose a merit for a mitzvah? If they regret it. Wow. So what does the Satan do? He creates a situation where Sarah dies as a result of the Akedah. So Avram Avinu comes in from Beersheba, and he finds that Sarah has passed away. He says, what happened? He says, it was the Akedah. At that moment, Avram Avinu is being tested. Because at that moment, you couldn't blame him. Why did I do that? Right? That would take away the merit of the Akedah. So what does Avram Avinu do? He cries less than he normally would to make sure not to act. Sometimes the physical has an effect on the emotion. The more you cry, the more you get upset. So Avram Avinu cries less than normal in order not to end up regretting the Akedah, because that's the last chance. That's why you've got Sarah Leviv Kosa. Now, who says this? I'd have to check my net. I have to. Somebody Jewish. Somebody Jewish. I have to check. I have to check my notes. What do you call it? I forgot who says it. It's one of the biggies. I have to check. I have a notes. Believe me, I'll try to find it by tomorrow. I have my notebook. Is there? What's in the other room? Now.
So that was the last challenge, perhaps.
So somebody asked me. Now this is you're asking an important question. Somebody said, but he only had 10 tests. Why? That's also a test. So why is he having another test if he only had 10 tests? So first of all, it could be that that's all considered part of that 10th test. It could be it's considered part of that test. But you have to understand something. This is very important. Avram Avinu, it doesn't mean that he never had other tests. It means every morning when he woke up, he still had to get up for Shacharis. That's a test every morning. He had a test. And every time there was a food with a questionable hechsher, that was a test. Right? You're always being and every time something, there's still tests in life. It means there were 10 main tests to create the stature and the level of an Avram Avinu. But it doesn't mean that once you're finished, okay, we're done. I mean, it's home free now. You're never home free. You're never home free. There are always tests coming at you. One way or the other, the tests are coming. And by the way, that's a reality in life. Let's say a guy works on, I'm going to be considerate of my wife. I'm not going to get upset with my wife anymore, right? And the wife gets him ticked off here, there. She does something, and he doesn't get angry. He doesn't get upset. So you're being tested, right? I overcame that. Wow, I've taken care of that problem of anger. By the way, if you could not get angry in the house, getting angry out of the house is easy. Not in the house, that's child's play. And a guy no longer gets angry. I've beaten the meter of anger. How do you like that? Okay, good. You just failed the test of arrogance. I'm all full of myself. Wow, I am one of the tzaddikim of the door because I don't get angry. We're good. Now you're a balgaiva. So the tests are always there. There's no such, they talked about there was a guy in the yeshiva who was a really top guy. He was a good learner and he had good midos and he was handsome. And he was going out on shidduchim. No girl was good enough for him. So the mashgiach comes over to him and he says, listen, Herschel, you're a good boy, but your ego is your ego's running away with you. You need to learn some musar. You need to gain a little, to learn a little humility. So, okay, for 3 months he sits there in the base medrash, and every night he has a musar seder. He learns, and he's learning all about humility. And then the mashgiach comes after 3 months. He says, by the way, somebody suggested a young lady for you. He said, who is it? He tells him, he says, not for me. He says, why not? He says, well, up until now I had a lot of good traits, and the girls were just not up to my level. Now I've even added another trait of humility. For sure, she's not going to be at my level. So the what do you call it? So the tests are always there. Did you ever hear Rabbi Yechezkel Abramsky was one of the Gedolei Hador, and he was one of the Gedolei Hador. So he was the head of the London Beis Din. And something came up in London, I forgot what it was. We're talking about back in the 50s. Something happened in the Beis Din, in the London Beis Din, with Shechita, there was something, and they called him in as the chief rabbi. He was the chief rabbi. So he offered his opinion in court, and the judge said, okay. Yeah, he did the stuffy English judge said, okay, I've heard your opinion. We now I would like to hear the opinion of the supreme halachic authority. So he said, Your Honor, I am the supreme halachic authority. So the judge says, my dear sir, a little humility. He said, Your Honor, I'm under oath. Right? So you have to know who you are. He wasn't being haughty and bragging. He was these are the facts. You need to hear from an expert. I am the expert. What do you want from me? I can't help that. Don't let it go to your head though. So the tests are always there. Okay, now watch this. Take a look at Rashi. In pasuk in the same pasuk, where it says Vayovo Avram, and pasuk Gimel, third line. Vayovo Avram lispod l'sarav livcha. He came to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, where is it? It's the fourth line from the bottom in the right column. Vayovo Avraham, says Rashi, mi be'er sheva. He came from Beersheba to Hebron in order to mourn and eulogize Sarah. The Medrash says two things. He came from Har HaMoriah, which is not in Beersheba, from the Akedah. He came from the Akedah, from Har HaMoriah, which is where the Beis HaMikdash is. And the Medrash says, and alternatively, he came from burying Terach. Terach apparently had died around this time, and he came from the burial of Terach, which begs the obvious question, make up your mind, where did he come from? He either came from Beersheba, or he came from Har HaMoriah, or he came from Haran, where Terach was. He couldn't come from all three places. So where did he come from? There are three different opinions. Rashi says from Beersheba. So he came from these three places to eulogize Sarah. So one of the Farshim, also Jewish, says that what does it mean he came from? What does it mean he came from? It is physically, where did he come from? He came from Beersheba. But when he was doing a eulogy, when he was saying a eulogy for Sarah Imenu, in English we use an expression, somebody says, where are you coming from? Yeah. I didn't mean physically, where are you coming from? Somebody says something like can I borrow $20? I say, where are you coming from? Yeah, are you ridiculous? I mean, how unrealistic could you be? That sort of thing. So Terach comes along. What does it mean, where was he coming from? It means he has to eulogize his wife. Where was he coming from in the eulogy? What was the eulogy over Sarah Imenu? The first part of the eulogy is that if you have a mother who could raise a child who's willing to go up to Har HaMoriah and extend his neck to be shechted because God said so, where did Yitzchak get that? Where did Yitzchak get that from? Where did Yitzchak get that ability to sacrifice himself for the cause? That's a eulogy for the mother. If a child behaves a certain way, it's because of what the mother instilled in him. I made a bracha before. If a Sarah Imenu, if a Yitzchak Avinu is willing to go and he doesn't fight his father at the Akedah, so who instilled that value in him? Who instilled that value in him? That's a value. That's one part of the eulogy. The other part of the eulogy is he came from the burial of Terach. That means Terach was an idol worshiper, and Avram Avinu was fighting against the pagan world. Who was his partner, and who gave him the encouragement and the strength to go on and fight that world? It was Sarah Imenu who helped him bury the ideals of Terach. The burial of Terach means to bury those ideas. That means the eulogy is that, where's he coming from physically? Beersheba. Well, what was it that Sarah Imenu, what was the praise of Sarah Imenu? The praise of Sarah Imenu is that you raise a child like that you support your husband in his battle, in his ideological battle. That's the eulogy of Sarah Imenu. By the way, somebody once said, it's a very good idea for a person to think about what they'd like to have others say at their funeral. And by the way, if you don't attend somebody else's funeral, they won't attend yours. But if there's it's a very good idea. It's a very good idea. What would you like to have said at your funeral, right? Or what would you like to have written on your tombstone? It's a good way to live. What would I like them to say about me at my funeral? Right? If you want them to say that you're a kind person, you better be a kind person. Nobody's going to say it if you're not. And if you want them to say you're generous, you better be a generous person. If they want you to say that they're a scholarly person, you better turn yourself into a scholar. You see, you can't bluff people. So I heard about this one rabbi. They call this rabbi in to eulogize this guy. Guy dies. Frank dies. So they called the rabbi, and Rabbi, we need you to eulogize Frank. So he starts asking the family, did he do this? No, he never done. No, nobody had anything good to say about him. Now the rabbi's got to get up and he's got to eulogize. He says, well, old Frank, his brother was worse. That was the eulogy. Well, you got to find something to say. Nobody's going to say something nice about you. Nobody's going to write something nice on a tombstone. I knew that. By the way, that guy who did the karate somersault, so his father was also a joker. His father was from the old generation. His father was one of the, in every shul there's that little old bald guy in the back who tells jokes. In every shul, usually between Mincha and Mariv on Shabbos. He gathers all the young guys around and tells jokes. He's always a little. So his father was that guy. So his father was once in a family gathering. I wasn't there, but they told me his father was at a family gathering, and he grabs like a bouquet of flowers, and he lies down on the couch with the flowers like this. He goes, "Okay, guys, I don't want to wait till I die to hear the eulogies. Start saying them now. Everybody get up and eulogize me right now. I want to hear, and it better be good." that was they had to say it. They had to eulogize the guy. Okay, so if a person wants something written on their tombstone, I actually heard, I think what Weinbach told us, there was a guy in Israel at a kibbutz. He was the baker for the kibbutz, and he had a magnificent recipe for this apple cinnamon cake. People came from the other kibbutz, we could see him around, they eat his apple cinnamon. He had baked this unbelievable apple cinnamon cake. on his tombstone, he had them engrave the recipe of this apple cinnamon cake. That was what was engraved on his tombstone. Could you imagine? You had people coming over to visit the grave with a pen and paper. Let's see, what was that too? Was that a little, can you imagine? That's what you want. But you have to live your life with that focus. You can't, it's not going to be, that number one. Number two, what's amazing is, if even by non-Jews, even by my mafia guys, a guy, they have a eulogy. What did they say at the eulogy? Oh yeah, I once saw him open the door for a little old lady, right? They never say, oh, old Frank, yeah, boy, he really liked good, fast cars, right? And could he put down a six-pack, boy? They never say that. They never say that at you. It's always, all of a sudden, it turns into, he was generous. He once gave money to what do you call it, because he didn't need it. And, and when he killed people, he did it gently so they shouldn't suffer. They never talk about, wow, this guy could really, he could hit bars. He could hit 3 bars in one evening. They never say that. Why not? Because at the moment of death, the truth is there. Everybody knows what it's really all about. It's not all about the pursuits about money and cards, that sort of thing. So when Avram Avinu is the eulogy for Sarah, the eulogy for Sarah is what she accomplished in her life. That's what a eulogy is about. Okay. So then Avram Avinu, skip on with this man Ephron. We're not going to be able to do everything over here. And Avram Avinu goes and he buys the Me'arat Hamachpelah. Are you in the mood to do a little work, gentlemen?
Yes.
Are you in the mood to do a little work? Okay, so I'm going to put you to work now. Now watch this. Starting from Pasuk Daled, he says, now you're going to have to follow this inside. You're going to have to keep track of this. Starting from Pasuk Daled, the last word on the line. Ger v'toshav anochi imochem. Avram Avinu says, Tenuli achuzas kever imochem. Give me a grave. Ve'ekbera mesi milfanai. I will bury my dead. I'll bury my dead. The wording, the word bury comes before the word dead. Okay? Look 2 lines later. Pasuk Vav. It's the 8th line from the top of the page. And they say back to him, Kivor es meisecha. Bury your dead. Again, the word bury comes before dead. See that? See where I am? Okay. Go down, one more, next line, and they say to him, no one will stop you, mikvor meisecha, from burying your dead. Number 3. 3rd time that bury comes before dead. Skip down 2 more lines, and Avram says, again, if you allow me, likbor es mesi, to bury my dead. Number 4, bury from dead. That's 5 lines from the bottom. Okay? Then, next page. So far we've got 4. Next page. 2nd line from the top. Ephron says, I'm giving you the cave. Kvor meisecha. Bury your dead. That's number 5. Okay? And then, one more time. 5 lines from the top. Avram says, I'm giving you the money. Ve'ekbera es mesi shama. I will bury my dead there. So 6 times, burial and death is mentioned. The word bury comes before the word dead. Watch this. The word bury comes before dead. Now it's going to mention one more time. Take a look at Pasuk Tesvav, 6 lines from the top. Vayan Ephron es Avram lemor lo Adoni shma'eni eretz arba me'os shekel kesef be'inchi ve'chamahi. Land of 4. Ve'es meischa kvor. You're dead, you should bury. So the first 6 times it says bury your dead. And the 7th time it says you're dead, you should bury. Okay. Now, where is it that this burial is going to take place? In Hebron, where specifically? Me'arat Hamachpelah. Okay. How many couples are in Me'arat Hamachpelah buried? 4 couples. How many are there right now? 1. One couple is there, Adam and Chava. Okay. Now, according to our tradition, the Gemara says that tzaddikim, even after death, they're considered alive. And the wicked, even while alive, they're considered dead. And a tzaddik is buried, there's an aspect that he's still alive and only dies 1 moment before Tchias HaMesim. Part of him is alive and only dies 1 moment before Tchias HaMesim. So 6 times it says, bury the dead. Because for tzaddikim, what comes first? The burial, and then the dead. So there are 6 tzaddikim who have to go into Me'arat Hamachpelah, right? Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Leah. All of them, it applies to say, bury the dead, because you're burying them alive, essentially. And that they're going to die one moment before Tchiyas HaMesim. But there's one more who's in the Me'arat Hamachpelah. Who is it? Esav's head. Esav's head is in the Tchiyas HaMesim. You're dead, you should bury. Because Esav is already dead when he's alive. He's dead, you should bury him. So the 7th one refers to Esav. The first 6 are the tzaddikim, the burial comes before the death. The 7th one is a Russia. The death comes before the burial. It's Meischa Kvor, bury your dead. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. Wow. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. Bury your dead. That's what the 7th refers to, the 7 who have yet to go into the Me'arat Hamachpelah. Okay. If you look at Pasuk of Daled, bottom of the page, so it says V'Avram Zaken Baba Yamim V'Hashem Beirachas Avram Bakol. And he had a daughter, he has a son. And then he tells Eliezer on the top of the next page, Simna Yodcha Tachas Yerechi, put your hand under my thigh. I'm going to have you make an oath. Now the idea when you make an oath, you always either hold a Sefer Torah or a tefillin or something holy. There was no holy object other than the bris milah. And therefore he has him place his hand in that area, under the thigh. He obviously isn't wholly touching the bris milah, but he puts his hand under his thigh because that's the holiest object around, so that the severity of the oath, even in secular courts, when you hold a Bible or something, when you make an oath, you hold a Bible. Okay, I think Jews in court, if you're allowed to decline swearing in court. I think you're allowed to. What's the word? I affirm. I affirm. I don't swear, but you're allowed to affirm. By religious, you're allowed to in an American court, you're allowed to decline swearing because it's against my religious beliefs, but I'm willing to affirm, or we call it affirm, right? Whichever one, I affirm, But whichever one it is, you don't have to swear. You don't have to swear. In American court, you're not obligated to swear. Now, here he puts his hand on his thigh, but the symbolic of Hirsch says, you know what the idea of putting a hand under his thigh is? Avram is saying to him, the hand under the thigh, symbolically, you're supporting me. I'm in your hands right now. In other words, I can't go. I'm too old to go to do this. This is the first shidduch in history. First shidduch that happens. I mean, Avram and Sarah was also a shidduch, but this is the first one that's reported. And he's telling him, I can't go. Adam and Chava was also a shidduch, right? Adam and Chava was also a shidduch, but there were no other choices. But here, Avram Avinu puts his hand under his eye. He says, what do you call it? I am in your hands. I need you to do this for me because I have no other choice. And he sends him to go find to go find a wife for Yitzchak. Eliezer goes off with the 10 men and 10 camels. Obviously, he had 10 men with him. And they go off and where do they go? They go to the well. Why do you go to the well? And he's not the only one, he's only the first one that says go. Who else would he go to a well? We're looking for a wife. Who else goes to a well? Yaakov goes to the well. Who else? Moshe Rabbeinu. They always go to the well. The well was the place where everybody's going to be at the well one way or another. That's where you're going to see people. So you go to the well, that's where you're going to find everybody. So Eliezer goes, and Eliezer says this, he asks for a sign. He says, now I want you to pay very careful attention, gentlemen. Look at the sign that he asks for. In the bottom of page 110, he says, Hine Anochi, 3 lines from the bottom of page 110. Hine Anochi nitzav aleina mayim, ubenos ansher yotzos lichov mayim. I'm going to be there by the well, and the girls are going to come out. The young lady to whom I say, incline the jug and let me drink, bend the jug and let me drink, and she responds, drink and I'll also give to your camels. That is the one. That's the one for Yitzchak. I mean, that's some test. I mean, how you decide on a shidduch is the girl gives you a drink, right? What does that mean? I was going to say, go to a bar. She gave you a drink. Okay, obviously not. Obviously not. We're talking about water over here. Number one. Well, what's Eliezer looking for? What's he looking for? He's looking for a replacement for Sarah Imenu. What kind of home was this? What was the theme of Avraham Avinu's home? chesed. There's one quality you look for in a Jewish girl, and a wife. In a wife, you look for one quality, which is? No, money. I meant the second quality. What's the quality you look for in a Jew? There is one quality. The Torah never says that she was smart. The Torah never says that she had a degree. The Torah never says that she was the head of a corporation. The Torah says, is she a bas chesed? Does she do chesed or not? It also mentions tznius. It also mentions she was pure. But the test that he's going to see is chesed. That's what he's looking for, because that's got to be the qualification. That's the qualification of a Jewish woman. Wife. Chesed. What's that? Wife. The wife. The wife. Why? Why? Because why? Why? Because chesed is nice. That's why. Because we are nice and we try to be nice, and you want somebody who's nice, and therefore that is the earmark of a a Jew in general. The Gemara says that the three signs of Jewish people: we are rachmanim, merciful, baishanim. We have a certain sense of shame. We gomlei chasadim, and we do chesed. That is the sign of the Jewish people. Rus did chesed, and Sarah Imenu did chesed, and that is what you're looking for in a Jew. A Jewish woman has to be a balas chesed. And the first sign he wants to see is she a balas chesed? Doesn't say anything about seeing what her SAT scores, right? And doesn't say anything about seeing what her hobbies are and what she did, what else was appeared on her shidduch resume. All it says is, does she do chesed? Now watch this. She comes out, and I want you to watch this, because you're going to see, to be smart, and I'm telling you this, gentleman, is a piece of advice. Intellectual, book smart, take it or leave it. She's got to have a certain common sense. That, yes. She's got to have a common sense. A wife has to have common sense. How much book smarts? The only book she really has to know is the big book of Jewish cooking. That's the most important book for a woman to know. Is the big book of Chumash. It's nice for her to say Tehillim and to learn Chumash. But the qualification to build a Jewish home, by the way, I want to tell you, I had a guy once in my shir. Here in Ohr Somayach. A guy once in my shir was a feminist. Hardcore feminist. The guy was a feminist. When the men go to the bed, they're worse than the women. And he was a hardcore feminist. So we're in the Gemara shir. So I told him a story. So there were the two girls from a seminary. They went to Rav Shach Zatzal. They came to Rav Shach and they said to Rav Shach, we don't understand this Ramban. They waited in line to ask Rav Shach about a Ramban. Obviously, there was no one in the Klal Yisrael they could ask about the Ramban except for the Gadol Ador. So obviously, they were trying to make a point about women's intellectual, what do you call it? So Rav Shach, if you knew Rav Shach, I was lucky to see Rav Shach a couple of times. He was always smiling. He was very old. He was always like I said. So they came and said, we don't understand this Ramban. He goes, my wife doesn't understand the Ramban either. She knows how to make kugel. Go home and learn how to make kugel. Yeah, Rav Shach said, it's a famous story about Rav Shach. So I told this story in shir. So this guy is a feminist. He looks at me. He goes, I'm telling you almost word for word how this went. Now, this was many years ago. He said almost word for word how this conversation went. He goes, why are you allowed to speak Lashon Hara about Rav Shach? So I said, how did I speak Lashon Hara about Rav Shach? He says, it's a terrible story. I said, it's a beautiful story. He goes, it's a terrible story. I said, it's a beautiful story. He goes, does your wife know you talk like this? So I said, 5834140, call her up. He goes, I will, right? Okay. We had a shear later in the afternoon. We had a second shear. The guy comes in. He looked like he'd gone 15 rounds with Mike Tyson, right? The guy's looking. I come into shear. I say, so Mark, did you call my wife? He goes, yeah. I said, what did she say? He goes, I can't believe there's somebody else in the world who thinks like you do. I say, why? What did she say? She said, well, why should they know the Ramban? What, he's going to come home from work and he's going to eat a Ramban? She's got to know how to cook. that was the happy ending to the story. So obviously a woman who needs to learn. Now, having said all that, a woman who needs to learn should learn. There are women who have an intellectual bent, and there's nothing wrong with them studying the parts of Torah that a woman is allowed to study. In some ways, it's very commendable. It's very commendable. But not that it take precedence over what she has to do, which is to run a home. If you've run your home, you got spare time. So instead of sitting down and watching TV or go surfing the web, so go say Tehillim, go learn some poetry. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm just being a little facetious. On the other hand, keep your priorities in order. And Eliezer is looking for her chesed. Look what she says back to him. Now look at this. Look how subtle. Look at her common sense. Look what she says back to him. In Pasuk Yud Ches, 7 lines from the top. He says to her, let me have something to drink. Look what she says. Vatomer, Shesei Adoni, drink. Vatemaher vatored kadol yodo vatesheh. She gives him to drink. Vatechala hashko, so she finishes giving him to drink. Vatomer gam legmalecha eshav. I will also draw for your camels ad im kilulishos until they finish drinking. What did he want to see? What was she supposed to say according to his request? Look carefully what he said. She was supposed to say what? She's saying, drink and I'll also give to your camels. And what does she do? She says, drink, and he drinks. And after he finishes drinking, she says, and now I'll give to your camels until they finish drinking. I'll draw for your camels. So the commentators say, look how klug, look how common sense she has. Look how tactful she is. What's she going to say to the guy? Imagine a guy knocks on your door, he's holding a dog. And you say, hi, come in, you and the dog can have something to eat. So what did you just put him in the same category as a dog? Right? So if she'd say, okay, I'll give you and the camel something to drink. Right? So you just put him in the same category as a camel. So she's got the tact to say, I'll give you to drink. And she gives him to drink. And after he finishes drinking, then she says what she's going to do for the camels, number one. Number two, there's an idea of not announcing your actions. It wasn't time to give the camels to drink yet, so she didn't say she's going to give the camels to drink. She waits until the moment that it's time to now draw for the camels. Now she says, and now I'm going to give to the camels. She didn't have to announce it in advance. Why should you announce what you plan on doing? She says, here's for you. He gives to drink, and only afterwards, she doesn't want to talk about herself. She lets her actions do the talking. And that's the test. That's the test for a Rivka. Okay. After this, she goes into the house, and he gives her some gold, some bling, and she's full. She got some bracelets and nose rings and everything, and she goes into the house, and she's got the man that I associate most with in the Torah, my favorite character, which is Lavan. Right? Lavan is the guy that I always associated with, and for good reason. When my brother and I would play Monopoly, right, I was always the banker, and there were always accusations of financial misappropriations, right? Which I'd be lying if I said were not true. See, I always felt that as banker, I'm entitled to take quarterly bonuses, right? Somehow my brother, especially after the game, took issue with that. So Lavan, we're going to see. Lavan is my favorite character in the Torah. We'll see about him tomorrow. Yes, go ahead.
Well, all the points that you brought up about finding a shidduch are obviously very important. Common sense, home building, cooking, the works like that. What about looking at shidduch as far as this is going to be the woman that raises my kids?
Absolutely.
Spend more than half of their waking hours with her.
That's exactly why we want somebody who's kind, somebody who's got common sense, exactly the correct criteria. The fact that she's intellectual, sometimes a woman who's highly intellectual, sometimes is a very big challenge because she wants to be with the books and not with the kids. And I know women like that who have, the women who are highly, they could put me, intellectually, they could drop me in their back pocket. But they sometimes struggle with the day-to-day raising of children, changing diapers and doing laundry and running and creating a woman creates the mood in the home. There's an Amora who said, I never call my wife, I call my wife my home. Wow. She creates the mood in the home. It's a struggle, it's a challenge like anything else. A woman who's not got the intellect has a challenge doing those things that she does. She doesn't have a challenge maybe davening or that sort of thing. But you should know that a woman's main role is the home. And a woman who's pulled away from that and sees the kids annoy her and is trying to spend as little time as well. The kids sense that. The kids feel that. They know when mommy is trying to just get them. I once read a book, a nutrition book. And in this nutrition book, I remember she writes, it was actually a Jewish woman who's intermarried. And she writes in this nutrition book something about, well, if you could get your kids to take care of their own food, but train them in the kitchen to take their own food, then you'll get off of routine kitchen patrol duty. And a from woman looks like, why? Who said that that's something to get off of kitchen? Maybe that's exactly how I build my family. I build my family with the kitchen. Reb Chaim Kanievsky's wife. She knew every one of her kids. She knew every one of their favorite foods and made it for them. Because that's how you build a home. You're trying to build a home. What's your goal? Your goal is to become a CEO. That's until a woman becomes a CEO. I was on a flight now. The woman was there was a female pilot. And also I say, hi, this is your captain, Shirley something or other speaking. I'm like, okay. Then I heard the co-pilot was a man, so I was okay. But she was, and then I saw her in the airport. I saw the pilot walking through the airport after we were waiting for that. She's wearing the cap in front, the captain's cap, and she's walking through, strutting through the airport like a man. I said, that's your goal? I mean, I have nothing wrong with women being a pilot. Go be a pilot. But what you're trying to prove a point? What are you trying to prove? You want to be a man? What are you trying to prove? Right? You have a role to play. You've taken care of that. Go do anything you want. But first, you have your priorities, just like a man. What about a man who doesn't have an intellectual bent? A man doesn't have an. You still have an obligation to learn a certain minimum amount of Torah, and you got to put on tefillin. I don't like the way leather feels. You still got to put on tefillin, right? And I don't like I don't like davening. You still got to daven. You got to listen to Kriyas Torah every week, and you got to be Ma'aver Sedra. There are minimums that a man has, but I don't have the intellectual bent. Well, that's too bad. So that becomes your challenge in life. A woman who's got a strong intellectual bent, that becomes a challenge. Like everybody else has challenges. That's her challenge. Okay, a man who doesn't like sports, that's a challenge. You have to like sports. That's a challenge. All right. See you tomorrow.